BeaverCountyPolice.com. You're listening to 95.7 FM, 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, in addition to 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls and 1460 WMBA Ambridge. Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romai to introduce today's program.
Good morning and welcome to the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. Viewed as many as a visionary leader in the healthcare industry, the St. Barnabas healthcare system is focused on offering compassionate care that increases the quality of life for our patients, residents, and retirement communities. In 1900, St. Barnabas opened as a charitable nursing home, and now there are campuses in Beaver, Allegheny, and Butler counties, where an array of unparalleled healthcare services, from skilled nursing to extensive memory care activities and programs, are offered. Additionally, the medical center has world-class doctor and dentistry teams where patients can receive a full range of services under one roof that also include comprehensive rehabilitation, home health and home care, hospice care, and palliative care. Building upon its heritage, St. Barnabas continues to reach out to those in need and lives out its mission through individual and institutional services which help the health and social needs of those in our care by increasing the quality of their life. Men and women are invited to join in the work of continuing Christian caring, healing, and teaching, and along with St. Barnabas bear witness to its founder's reminder, God is able. Our guest today continues to help the residents of the greater Pittsburgh area recognize the benefits of the work-life stay balance that are occurring in the many communities in this district. In our conversation this morning, Representative Josh Kale, we will talk about the work that keeps us on that pathway. And Josh is still in Harrisburg. He stayed there because they were working on the budget last night, but he's freed up some time to talk with us this morning. State Representative Josh Kale, welcome.
Hey, how are you today, Mike?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We're hanging in there, trying to get this budget wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. It's been a wild couple of days here, back and forth, and it's just this time of year is always we'll call it exciting.
Yeah, well, I know you expected to be back here in the district today, but because the budget talks were going on yesterday and the governor was involved with it all, kind of like 11th hour type conversations going on and debates going back and forth. And especially the last 12 hours, tell us about the tension and, I don't know, some people may call it excitement if you like this sort of thing, but the jockeying back and forth between the Republicans and Democrats.
There was a deal made that had a lot of Governor Shapiro's initiatives in it, along with a lot of Republican initiatives in it. It was thought to be a pretty good brokered deal. There was a provision supporting a way out of failing schools for families that live in those areas, where basically if you live in a district where your school is in the bottom 15%, you can go and take your state money and go to a different school because that school district you're in is failing, and we don't want kids to be trapped in those school districts. Governor Shapiro supported this initiative. He said he supported it on a campaign trail. He said he supported it during the budget negotiations. However, unfortunately, the House Democrats did not support it, and for some reason or another, the majority leader in the Democrat House majority just ran over Governor Shapiro, and Governor Shapiro capitulated to him. And we ended up with a budget that stripped out the governor very strangely and weakly, to be frank. I think it's a very weak move. Made a statement yesterday, publicly made the statement that he is going to veto his own priority. He says in the statement, this is a priority of mine, but I can't get it through the House. so I'm going to go ahead and veto it once they put it on my desk so that we can get this done. Mm-hmm. It makes zero sense. It shows no fortitude at all. And by the way, it completely undercuts the deal that he had with the state Senate, who is completely irate with the decision that he made without their knowledge. Listen, I understand if you can't get something done and you're too weak to get it through your own party. I get that. That happens. It's an issue. But what you can do is tell your party, strip it out, send it back to the Senate, and let's keep negotiating on other things. That's not what was done. He decided to use a line-item veto on a signature initiative that he claimed to support on national television in a veto statement that he says he supports it, but he's still going to veto it. It's typical politicians doing typical things. That's the reason why no one trusts Harrisburg. And this is what happens when you get a guy from Philadelphia up there just trying to wheel and deal and do whatever he can to survive. It's unfortunate because what you end up with is 15% of those kids in the bottom 15% of schools are still trapped, all because of the games that we're playing in Harrisburg and all because of the failure of really the Democrat Party collectively on this issue. Not a good way to start your first budget because at the end of the day, you're going to need to deal with the Senate on anything. The Senate cannot trust the governor whatsoever. They put out a statement just blasting the governor yesterday. There's the Senate pro temp is irate with how this went down. They may have a short-term win. They may have won this particular battle. But for any legislative priority that the governor might have, or the governor in the House Democratic Caucus, Leader Bradford, it's going to be a hard sell now, and it's just not how Harrisburg is supposed to work. It's not how divided government's supposed to work, but it's unfortunate that's where we are. And it's what we have to deal with, and we got to go forward and work within the circumstances that we have.
State Representative Josh Kale is our guest. And Josh, as a taxpayer, why should I care about $100 million being set aside for vouchers to school programs? If I don't send my children to school, or if I want to send my children to a private or parochial school, as I did, as a matter of fact, I sent my kids to Catholic schools when they were growing up, and I paid the tuition, and I also paid my taxes. Why do I care, and why should we set aside money? If the parents want to send their kids to a private school, let them pay for it.
Well, so there's a couple of different reasons. One, first off, and most importantly, you have parents that are trapped in these school districts that cannot afford to send their kids to private schools or don't have the ability to send them to a charter school. And that's really, first and foremost, the biggest issue. You have, individuals that can't afford to move to a nicer neighborhood. They can't afford to send their kids to a private school. And there is no other choice for those parents in those districts. And we should be concerned about those. As the governor stated, every child of God deserves an excellent education. That was his rationale for supporting this. And he still does allegedly support it. But even though he's going to veto it. So there's that. Number two, as a taxpayer, if you don't have a concern for the children trapped in struggling schools, for those that live in those schools, the property value of those areas goes up as well. What's one of the major reasons why people move to areas? Well, it's excellent schools. If you have the ability to qualify for that system, that gives you an incentive to move to that area as well. And a very poor school isn't as big of a deal as far as that goes for the consideration. Yeah. It adds to your value as a taxpayer for people wanting to move into the district, or if you want to move out.
When you're dealing with that, and people do move to particular areas because of the school districts. If they have children, they want to go to a school district to their liking. So if you give them a voucher, if you give vouchers out to what you consider to be underperforming schools or failing school districts, maybe it's not the district, maybe it's the students and that process. And what you're doing then is taking those tax dollars and giving it to those families and sending those kids to school districts where other parents decided to move away from because they didn't want their kids to go with those other kids.
Well, I mean, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the crux of the statement
Well,
is.
here. Let me
I think that we should.
let me explain it this
Go
way,
ahead.
Josh. Okay, so I live in the Beaver Falls School District, and I want my kids to go to Blackhawk because I think Blackhawk's a better school district. I couldn't afford the taxes to go to Blackhawk, or maybe too many parents who move into the Chippewa area decide that this is a better school district for my kids. I don't want them to go to school with those kids in Beaver Falls. Now you're going to give my kids a voucher in Beaver Falls so that I can choose to go to Blackhawk. They didn't want to go with our kids. That's why they moved
so
there.
This is about the bottom 15% of schools and them having the ability to go to a private school, not to go to Blackhawk or some other school like that. It's about making sure that every student in those poor performing schools has an opportunity to come out of those areas and succeed in life. And that's something that we've had broad consensus on as far as support in Republicans and Democrats, but unfortunately we couldn't get it done this time around.
But I guess my question is it the district that's failing, or is it just the student who doesn't want to learn and the parents who don't care about their students' learning abilities, and they're just going to take that attitude to a new school district with the state's money?
Well, you could say that, and you could say that that the parents don't care, the students don't care. But the bottom line is there are parents who care in these poor school districts. There are students that care that are trapped in these areas. And for those students and for those parents, they ought to have options to get out of those areas because not everyone can afford to move to a nicer area with nicer schools. At the end of the day, we cannot guarantee outcomes, but we should be able to help opportunity and give parents a choice and control over their child's education as best as we can. Mm-hmm. The money that is coming in for education is not ultimately the money of the school district. It is the money to educate children. And unfortunately, the status quo in Harrisburg is very focused on the institutions, the archaic 19th, 20th century education system that we have that is failing. That is failing on a lot of different metrics. So you look at how we're training kids across the world, and America is behind, by and large, because of the teachers union that we have here. And that's fairly well recognized across the board, that they are just interested in bloating the failed status quo. And it's something that we need to make sure that we are focused on, not the institution, but we are focused on the children. So I know teachers are, and I know that they are very much, that's why they do it. But unfortunately, here in Harrisburg, there are special interest groups that don't represent the interest of our local teachers who are doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, so it is about the teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and of course the teachers union is a strong proponent, and the Democrats and the teachers union have long been allies in all this. So there's a lot of lobbying going on in terms of the private and cyber schools. Do they do a lot of lobbying in Harrisburg, and where do their dollars go? Democrats or Republicans?
If you look at cyber schools, it's interesting. PA Cyber has about 300 unionized teachers that are unionized with the PSEA, which is remarkable because the PSEA right now is actively working against their interests, which I don't know how they justify keeping them on as a union, but that's their cross to bear, not mine. There certainly are school choice advocates that support both sides of the aisle. There are people in the state Senate. There is a Senator Anthony Williams, who is from Philadelphia, who is one of the strongest proponents of school choice and who came out very strongly in favor of this budget as it was before the line item veto, because he understands that the kids in his district are struggling terribly. And the Philadelphia school system has become a total failure. And really, if you don't have the resources to move out of Philadelphia, as a parent, your child is trapped in a system that's the proficiency levels are just unbelievable if you start looking at the stats and looking at what is actually being taught or what's not being taught. And for those kids, we ought to be in a position where we can deliver hope for struggling families.
Very good. State Representative Josh Kale. I've got to take a break, Josh. State Representative Josh Kale is our guest. It is the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network.
Falling in love is one thing. Having anxiety about falling is a whole different subject. If you or a family member are concerned about falling, and yes, either up or down the stairs, or maybe even out of bed, St. Barnabas has a special message and some ideas just for you. Years of experience in working with people who are prone to falls has given St. Barnabas special expertise in this area. Call them at 724-443-0700 and learn about ways that you can begin to feel more confident and safe, including suggestions that you can implement right now into your daily routine. Call St. Barnabas at 724-443-0700. For many years now, St. Barnabas has been helping people fall, in love that is, with their new, better life, a longer life, a risk-free life. Call St. Barnabas now at 724-443-0700 or visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com and learn more about living longer and better.
It is the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romai. Our guest this morning is State Representative Josh Kale, who is in Harrisburg, working on the budget as the rest of the legislature is after Governor Shapiro's veto yesterday, or promised veto, of a $100 million program put into the budget for vouchers for private and parochial education. Josh, it's a compelling topic that we discuss in terms of who's to bless and who's to blame and where do we go forward with this kind of program. Now, explain, because I know there was a lot of other things going on in the budget talks, but in terms of the voucher program, and you talked about 15% and struggling and failing school districts. If I want my student to go to a particular district, do they have to be accepted? Or if I take a voucher to the superintendent and say, I got this voucher from the state, I want my child to go here, do they have to accept them, or do they have to be accepted by the particular school?
So it doesn't go. The voucher wouldn't apply to other school districts. It would apply to private school systems, and there would be a system in place for them to be accepted or not accepted. And there's schools that are ready to accept these kids in these failing areas. It's important. Something else that I missed in this whole topic of conversation. These vouchers, or these lifelines, as we call them, are not available for anybody making over a certain amount of income, and it's not. It's about middle class. It's about $75,000 for a family of four, and for more kids, it goes up a little more. But this is not something that's open for everybody. It is something that would be available for people that are struggling and obviously couldn't afford a private education for their schools, and on top of that, live within a district that is in the bottom 15%.
Yeah.
The bottom line is the status quo has failed these kids. Mm-hmm. And as a society, we are better off when we have opportunity for every family, regardless of their zip codes.
Yeah.
We can't guarantee outcomes. We can't guarantee how it works, but these school districts have failed these children.
But it's not about...
They keep throwing money at it. Just has not proven successful in the past. The money gets washed up in the institution, and they just come back and ask for more money.
But you are you are throwing money at the problem, aren't you? Because you're using $100 million, and it's a gift to private schools to say, here, we're going to help you out with this. So you are throwing money at a program that will destroy public education in the long run.
that's a ridiculous statement, destroy public programs. This budget has historic funding for public education. The $100 million is not included in that. It's above and beyond the historic funding for public education. At the end of the day, the money that we are spending on these schools is not working. So we got to try something different. We cannot keep trying the same things.
Well, what's different? What's different?
Offering choice and competition for school districts, offering choice and competition for school district is a big advantage for parents, and it'll put fire under the feet of these failing school districts. Offer incentive for them to get out of those bottom 15%.
Well,
and at the end of the day, this is about the students.
At the end of the day,
providing the best education that we can for these students. And that's what this does.
But at the end of the day, why don't the private institutions, the parochial institutions, lower their tuitions to make it more affordable for families? As I said at the very beginning.
You mentioned that.
As I said at the beginning, Josh. But I did pay tuition to Catholic schools for both of my children for 8 years, and I still paid my taxes to the public school system. You live within your means.
So you don't want families to have that same opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I do. If you want it, you pay for it.
Then you support this program.
Josh,
well, they can't,
Josh, it's a
some
support.
People can't afford it.
It's a Republican mantra. If you want it, you pay for it. You have to suffer a little bit and tighten your budget to make it work for you. I don't understand why you guys are wanting to give away $100 million here.
It's an opportunity to provide hope for families that are in struggling positions that aren't fortunate enough to be able to pay for it. And by the way,
I wasn't fortunate. I'm a working stiff.
1 second. By the way, the amount that is being spent per kid is $5,000 in this program. At a public school, especially in places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, the amount per kid is something like $25,000. Which goes to show you the inefficiencies of those school districts and the waste that is within their systems. This is not about taking money from schools that are performing. This isn't about taking money from anybody, quite frankly. In fact, this is a boon for those school districts because they still get their state funding and they still get the tax dollars from those kids that they're not going to be teaching. So they're going to be getting paid for not providing a service, but it is providing a choice for the parents. Mm-hmm. And those kids are important enough that we ought to be able to provide that choice for them. Idea that destroys public education, that's PSEA talking point. Yeah, all right. They're afraid of competition because it will force them to start teaching differently and not had the status quo. It'll force them in these failing schools to do something. These aren't the school districts that we have in Beaver County, in my district. This isn't Beaver or Black Hawk. It's school districts that have failed their students in other places, especially in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And people ought to have a choice.
But the idea, and we're just up against the clock. I just want to ask you one more question. Harrisburg has notoriously underfunded public education in your budgets throughout the years.
That's completely untrue.
It is. You don't say there's a percentage that you should be giving or putting out to the education, and the state hasn't done that in years.
That's untrue. That's another talking point that's untrue. Our funding per student is one of the highest in the nation. It's in the top 5, I believe. I can get you the statistics. Now, that includes the local property tax funding along with the state funding. So in totality, which is all that matters, our funding is in the top some percentage, and our outcomes are actually in the lower part of the list. So we're actually not performing as well in Pennsylvania as we should be as it relates to providing an excellent education for our kids, which should be the only focus of any of this.
All right. I love having this conversation, Josh, and I know you do as well.
Too. Thank you.
I think the give and take is just great that we're able to discuss these matters, and I invite you back.
What's amazing about it, Mike, is these are conversations that aren't new, right? I mean, right. Tom Ridge had these conversations with people. Governor Rendell had the conversations. You had Mike Terzai had these conversations, and it's always been it's been always interesting coalitions. Sometimes Democrats support it, like you had with Governor Shapiro. Sometimes you don't have them. Sometimes Republican. It's an interesting coalition of people. But we can't have a system where debate is shut down on it.
Right.
We're having too much of that here in the House, to be frank. We need to have open dialogue, and these are valid points that we're having, and it needs to be discussed in the public, and we need to find a way forward because you and I agree on this.
Yeah.
Kids need a great education, and that's what this is about.
Very
it's about
good.
providing a great education for as many kids as possible.
Josh,
so,
thank
you
you
for the conversation.
Well, man, I invite you on anytime. You know, you're always welcome, and I look forward to having more conversations with you.
All right. Talk to you later, buddy.
State Representative Josh Kale on the Best of Beaver County Radio Show. I'm Mike Romai. It's in the St. Barnabas Radio Network, and we'll continue to have these conversations. You stay well, be safe, and we'll talk again.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. St. Barnabas is pleased to have provided content and sponsorship for the program. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 for an encore presentation of today's program on Beaver County Radio. And next Thursday at 11 for another edition of the Best of Beaver County on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM. Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.